In this video, I just want to show you how to access the new Pascal server on a Windows machine. So to access the Pascal server, you need to use the McMaster VPN. And the quickest way to get to the McMaster VPN, go to Google, put in the McMaster Cisco VPN. It should come up. And then you should be able to go to the first link here, click on that, click on this one here on the right. Now, if you're located in China, you're going to want to use the Express VPN for students located in China. And you're going to go to how do I download VPN software, download the VPN for your computer. And then to connect, you can go to how do I connect to ExpressVPN and check out that there. If you're not located in China, you can scroll down here to the general student VPN. And you can go to how do I download here, and then download the VPN for your system. And then you can connect, using these instructions here. Though I'll show you now. So I'm on a Windows machine. So I'm going to go to how do I download VPN software. I'm going to download the Windows version. And it's going to make you put in your Mac ID username and password. So you have to just do that. And it'll download, and then you can install this VPN client. Now VPN, if you don't know, when you use a VPN client, it connects your computer to another network. And if you use the McMaster VPN, it's as if you have connected to the McMaster network. And it's almost like you're using a computer on McMaster campus. And it just gives you access to things that only computers on the McMaster network have access to. So we'll just run this installer here. Just, it's a bunch of yeses and next, nothing really special we're going to do here. Say finish. And then after we've done that, we should be able to run the VPN. So if I go down here, I say Cisco, it'll come up with the Cisco AnyConnect Secure Mobility Client. Otherwise, you should be able to go through the start menu somehow. I'm sure if you go start, it should be under here, Cisco AnyConnect recently added, or Cisco folder here, right? But anyways, you get to this, you click on it, and it'll say ready to connect. I should be able to just say connect. Please enter a secure gateway to connect to. So let's just go. It should give you an option. Oh, I'm surprised it doesn't give you an option there. That's surprising. It doesn't just give you a pre-populated option. So let's just scroll down here to how do I connect to the student VPN. And it looks like we have to put this in. We have to put in student.vpn.mcmaster.ca. On some systems like Mac, it just sort of does that for you automatically. But that's not a big deal. We'll just copy and paste that in. We'll put that here and just say connect. Okay. So then we'll put in our username and our password to connect. Accept. And at this point, I've connected to the network there. And at this point, it's as if I'm on the McMaster network. So then if I want to use SSH to connect to the Pascal server, I can scroll down here, put in CMD to open up the command prompt. Open up the command prompt, and then I should be able to say SSH browniek at pascal.cas.mcmaster.ca. And I should be able to put in my password, my Mac ID password. So use your Mac ID and your Mac ID password. And then we have our terminal here. And if I say ls, I can see my files there, and I can see that I don't really have anything on there right now. So it's your Mac ID and your Mac ID password, the same one you use for Mosaic and Avenue and email and everything else. Once I'm on the Pascal server, one thing we can do with this server is I can say make dir public HTML. And if I check, that makes me a directory public HTML. And if I cd into that directory there, what it is this directory is publicly accessible. So it's accessible at https://pascal.cas.mcmaster.ca/ the tilde squiggly symbol there, your Mac ID. And at this URL, the public HTML is basically sort of mapped to this directory there. So it's basically mapped to that directory there. And if you punch it in, you can see what you've got there. So I'll just punch it in. I'll say https, and I'll say pascal.cas.mcmaster.ca ~browniek. And there's that folder there. It's empty because I don't have any files in it. If I were to make a file there, like let's say I make a file, and I put in something. So I'll put in like vi, myfile.html to make a file. And I'll just add some text in here. So I'll just say some text in a file, and I'll save this file here, and I see that that file is there now. If I refresh here, I'll see that file there now. And if I click on it, I can access that file. So I can now, put things like HTML files into that public HTML folder, and then view them at this URL here, pascal.cast.mcmaster.ca/ the squiggly tilde symbol / your Mac ID. And so that's one thing we can now do with this Pascal server that we couldn't do before. Now, one way of accessing and editing files on your account is just to use the command line text editing tools, right? So you could use like VI, you can use Emacs, you can use Nano, and you can use those tools to edit files. That's one way of doing it. In this video, I wanted to show you 2 other ways of doing it, because maybe you don't like these command line tools. Maybe you want to use a text editor on your own system. So one way you can do that is you can download a text editor for your own computer, and you can download an SFTP client or an FTP client. And you can then edit the files locally, and then you could use the FTP client to transfer them over to the server, where then you could run GCC or do whatever you want with those files. So if I'm going to do that, I need to get a text editor and a SFTP client. So I'm going to go get a text editor. The one that I've been using lately is called Visual Studio Code. It's by Microsoft. I've been using it for about a year now, and I've really liked it. It's pretty solid. So official site for Visual Studio Code. I should be able to say download for Windows. I think this installer happens automatically. But yeah, Visual Studio Code is pretty good. It'll syntax highlight just about any kind of file that you've got, if it's HTML or C or whatever it is. And it also includes this thing that most modern text editors have, which is a kind of package facility where you can extend the functionality of Visual Studio Code by installing particular packages. So I'll show you that too as a third way of actually editing files on the server too, because it's just kind of neat to see it. But there's a bunch of other good text editors, like Atom, ATOM is pretty good. Sublime Text is pretty good. And they have similar capabilities to Visual Studio Code. So we can run this installer here, and this should install Visual Studio Code. So I'll say accept. Okay. I'll just go with all the default options and just say install. And this should install Visual Studio Code, and we'll get a nice text editor here. Okay, so it's installed. It says launch. Okay, so I'll launch it. Why not? Otherwise, you just go down here and just go to like Visual Studio Code, and you can find it. But I've launched it here. And what I could do is make a file here. So I can make a file here. I'll say file new. And let me see if I can kind of quickly, okay, I can kind of zoom in like this to make it bigger, though that kind of makes everything else look bad. So maybe I'll change the preferences here. I'll change the font preferences. So I'll say preferences, and this is kind of good for you to see anyways, right? So I'll say settings, and then I could say text editor, and there's usually a way to change the font size. So I'll say font size, and I'll make it just bigger so that way we can see everything. So I say 22, it's saved automatically. Okay. So it should be nice and big now, or at least bigger. So now I can say like number include stdio.h, int main. I can make my main function here, return 0, and I could make some C file here. So return 0, and then I would say printf, hello world for my little hello world program here. And I could then save this here. So I'll save this file. If you go file save or whatever you want. So I'll say file save as. I'll save it on my desktop, and I'll make a folder on my desktop called 1XC3. So I'll make a new folder, 1XC3, and I'm going to save this file in there as hello.c, right? Now I've kind of got a local file in a nice editor that I can, use, and it's a nice rich editor. You might prefer editing this way to editing on the command line. And then the thing I have to do then is I have to get this file somehow onto the server. And the way I do that is with an SFTP client, if I want to do that. So I could say Google search, and I get an SFTP client. Now CyberDuck, I believe, is actually for Windows now too. Another one that people like for Windows is called WinSCP. It doesn't really matter though what you use, to be honest with you though. It really doesn't. Well, we're just going to download CyberDuck now. But SFTP, WinSCP, WinSCP, that's another good one that a lot of people like that one. So WinSCP looks like this. Might as well show you that one downloading. WinSCP right there. All right. So anyways, this one's finished downloading. Let's just use CyberDuck because why not? It's got a duck. I mean, you can't argue with that. Install this. Okay, it's complete. So then to use this program to connect to the Pascal server, we're gonna have to put in our credentials. We're gonna have to put in our host name, our username, and so forth to actually connect to our account on the server. So if you go to Open Connection here, you have to pick SFTP because we're using SSH and the S stands for SSH. So SFTP, go to that. And for the server, you put in pascal.cast.mcmaster.ca. You leave the port as 22. Your username is your Mac ID. Your password is your Mac ID password. Then you say connect. And I say allow. And then you'll see here, we've got that public HTML folder. I know it's probably small if you're watching this, but you've got a public HTML file with the myfile.html in there, right? And we can then, change and files and transfer files over and things like that using this program here. So let's just say I want to transfer over my hello.c file that I saved on the desktop. I just go to the desktop here, 1XC3, and go to hello.c here, transfer it over, say allow. And then I could then run that file there. On the server, and I can see that it's there. So if from here I say, right now I'm in the public HTML folder, so I don't see it. But if I go cd ... to go back a folder and say ls, I'll see the hello.c file that I transferred over there, right? And then I could run it that way too. So I could say like gcc, hello.c or hello, and I could say, -o hello.c, and I could run it this way, right? And it would print out hello world and end. So I must have put the new line in character in wrong, right? And so this would be one way that I could edit files, right? Is I could change them locally like this. So I could make a change to a file. I'm going to put in the correct new line character, and then I could use CyberDuck, and I could say, okay, or any SFTP client, right? And I could say, okay, let's transfer over that file there. So I'm going to say here, desktop, 1XC3, and I'm going to transfer over that file there. I'll say continue. Okay, so I've transferred it over, and then I can then run this to compile it, run this to run it, and I fixed the end. It is showing up in the new line now, right? So that's one way of doing it. The other way of doing it was I was editing files locally. So when I made that myfile.html, I said, I used the VI editor. So I could say VI and my program.c, and I can edit the files this way, right? That's the other way of doing it. Now, and I could just, put in whatever I want here. So like number include std io.h, and I could say main, and I could whip together a little program here and just say like return 0 and say printf, another file here, and save this file. And then I could, run this file then. So I could say like, I've got a program file there called myprog.c, and I could say gcc -o myprog.c, and I could do everything locally on the terminal like this, and run that file there now, and I get another file there. So this is one way of doing it, is just stick to the command line. And that's a good way of doing it, but then you got to get to know these editors. A lot of people don't like that, maybe. And if that's the case, you could do it this way: is use Visual Studio Code and Win or an FTP client like CyberDuck and edit your files, transfer them over. That's another way of doing it. Now, one more way of doing it that's kind of nice is you can use what's called a package. And these packages extend the functionality of your text editor. I'll show you the one for Visual Studio Code, but they exist for other editors as well. You'll have to research those if you want to use them. But I'll show you how to do it with Visual Studio Code. What you can do is you can use a package tool to say, I want to automatically transfer my files over to the server when I save them in this folder. So I'll show you an example of what I mean. If you go to File and you go to, where is the extensions? It's different on extensions here. So on Windows, you go to extensions here, or at least this is one way of doing it. You go to this extensions icon here. So if you go here to extensions and you put in SFTP here, the first one that should come up should say LIXIMOMO, and you go to install this. This extends the functionality of Visual Studio Code. And it gives you the ability to use basically an integrated SFTP program that'll transfer your files over automatically. And it works from a directory. So for this to work, you have to open up a directory. And then once you open up the directory, then you can then configure it. And you say like Control-Shift-P to configure it. So we'll open up a directory. And it's just the way it expects it, is that you have this sort of directory that's your workspace. So I'm going to go to desktop 1XC3 and I'm just going to say open. I'm not going to click on a file. I'm just going to say open. So I say open here. And it doesn't like that. I'm kind of surprised. So we'll say open folder. Oh, okay. I got to say open folder. And I'll say select folder. So on Windows, you got to say open folder and then select folder. So file, open folder, select folder. So I'm going to select this folder here, 1XC3. So we'll click on that. And now you see that I've got like the hello.c file in that folder here. And what I can do is I can configure this to actually to run SFTP. To do that, I've got to bring up that option there. So I've got to say Control-Shift-P. So Control-Shift-P. Control-Shift-P brings up this terminal here where you can enter in like commands. And if I put in SFTP, I get this SFTP:config. You want to click on that. And when you do this, what it does is it creates this hidden folder here, .vs code, and it gives you this sftp.json file here. This is like a config file that you can edit, and you can put in the credentials for the Pascal server. Then it'll use these credentials to take any files that you save in this folder and put them on the server automatically when you're editing them in VS Code. So I put in the host name for Pascal server. I put in my Mac ID. Now for my remote path, it needs to be the path on the server where I want the files to be stored. So for me, that's /home/browniek. For you, it'll be /home/your Mac ID, right? So if I said pwd here, I'd see that I'm on /home/browniek. I want the files to save right in this folder here. So I'm going to use that as my folder there. And then now if I make a change here, I got to save this file. You got to remember to save this file. This is what won't work. So I just save that file. If I go to hello.c here, and I say, let's just say put more content here. I'll make this a bit bigger. So I'll say some more content, and I save this. So now if I save this, I just said Control S to save it. I didn't hit Control S there correctly, so I just went to File, Save. It'll bring up this, and it'll say, what's your password? So you put in your password, and then down here it'll say done hello.c. What that means is it's automatically sent the file for you. So in this directory, the same directory that you specified, you'll see that hello.c file. If I were to compile that file, I'm going to get that new line there, right? Because I just changed the file. So I get some more content there, and that's because I changed the file. If I open it up again, you'll see that new line is there, right? So what's kind of cool is now I can edit things locally and then compile on, GCC on the Pascal server. And this is a typical thing people do. Like, this is why this is a package, is because people like to do this kind of thing. So, you could make this command line here smaller here, and you could then have your editor up here or something like that. And you could have a kind of a nice setup like this, where you've got like a rich text editor to allow you to edit files, and the command line here to allow you to compile them and just see what's going on. So if I wanted to make another file in this directory, I could just say file or control N for new file, and then I'll make another file. So I'll say number include stdio.h. I'll say int main return 0. And then I'm going to say printf, and I'll say like another file altogether. So for another file altogether here. And I'm going to save this as, I'll do Control S to save this as another.c. So I just saved it as another.c. When I did that, it says done another.c down here. What's happened is it's actually, because it's in this working directory, and because I've got it set to have everything that I save here saved over in this remote path, it'll actually already be over here. So if I say ls, I see that I've got another.c there. And I could then compile it and run it, right? And so this can be like a nice little way to set up an environment for yourself where you can, edit in a nice text editor like this and have it automatically transfer over here and then just run GCC and so forth. And so I just want to show you this setup as well, because it's sort of the third way of doing it. The other way was edit right on the terminal with like VI, Emacs, and Nano. The second way was you could edit them locally, transfer them over with an SFTP client. And this is the third way, set up a text editor to actually transfer the file over. I've showed you how to do it with Visual Studio Code. You can do it with others though, just so you know. So anyways, hopefully this is helpful in terms of getting you going with Pascal and just showing you a way to set up, an environment that maybe you want to work with. And there you go. So, all right, thanks.